Hello, and welcome to the year 11. At the top of the news, it's been 2 years now since the Varian disaster in Germania, when 3 Roman legions were ambushed and annihilated in the marshes of the Teutoburg forest. Led by Publius Quintilius Varus, a decorated general feared by the locals for his brutality and crucifixion of insurgents, the 17th, 18th, and 19th were betrayed and overwhelmed through a treacherous alliance of tribes, and after 3 days of desperate battle, all 20,000 men were lost. Back in Rome, the loss so shook Augustus Caesar, he reportedly refused to cut his hair for months, and up to the present day has been heard on occasion to moan, "Varus, give me back my legions." It is only now that Rome feels ready to begin punitive campaigns. The man in charge is Tiberius, Augustus Caesar's adopted son and heir, and the reconquest of these lands beyond the Rhine will be a slow and deliberate endeavor. And although the numbers of the lost legions will never again appear in the Roman army, one of Tiberius's first objectives is the recovery of their eagles. Within 200 years of its being introduced into Rome, astrology has replaced the reading of animal entrails and the interpretation of bird cries and movements as the most popular and accurate form of divination and prediction available. And what a mighty tool it has been in maintaining the Pax Deorum between the gods and the city. So it should come as no surprise that the Senate has decided access to this reservoir of power and knowledge should be monitored and regulated. An edict, effective immediately, bans all private and individual consultations with astrologers, and further bans any predictions concerning someone's death. And the prediction of an emperor's death is now considered the highest treason. In other Senate news, the slave-related consultum Solonianum, passed last year, is now in effect. Designed to protect masters against open attacks on their lives, it stipulates that after a master's violent assassination, all slaves living under the same roof are to be interrogated under torture and executed, unless they can prove that they gave him all possible support. Another consultum taking effect this year bans all freeborn females under the age of 20 and freeborn males under the age of 25 from competing in the arena. And speaking of the Senate, there's been much debate over the years as to the Senate's true power and purpose under the all but absolute rule of Caesar Augustus. Sadly, Marcus Anticius Labeo, one of his most outspoken opponents, has passed away at the age of 65. Labeo came from a plebeian family of Samnite origins, and his father had sided against Augustus in the civil wars following Julius Caesar's assassination, and he died supporting Brutus in defense of the Republic. Marcus too was always openly opposed to imperial rule, and yet he managed to become the greatest figure in imperial jurisprudence. In fact, his success was so great, Augustus was eventually obliged to offer him the consulate, which he declined. In world news, a natural disaster has fallen on the distant kingdom of Ceres, the land where silk comes from. A massive dike system on their Great Yellow River has collapsed, sending floodwaters throughout the countryside, killing hundreds of thousands, and creating a huge wandering mass of desperate and starving peasants. Having failed at storing enough grain for hard times, the situation there has degenerated into a widespread famine. Turning to business, there's a growing industry first introduced just 60 or so years ago, whose products have already been found in the marketplace and in the homes of many. Glass blowing, a process far superior to pottery in many respects, is a new form of glassware that's turning up on tables across the empire. Non-porous, translucent, and most importantly, odorless, it may be time to put away those clay cups, bowls, and beakers for good. Of course, some business is as old as the hills. Homer called it liquid gold, and oil has always been and continues to be one of, if not the most important commodity in the Mediterranean world. Life revolves around it, and it drives Rome's economy. From it flows a fountain of wealth and power. Yes, olive oil pervades every aspect of daily life, from morning to night. But just how big a business is it? To get an idea, we went down to the dump behind the harbor. This is where the ships empty their terracotta containers of imported oil. And this ever-growing mountain is where over 150,000 of these 65-liter jugs are thrown out every year. That's over 7.5 million liters. And it doesn't include locally produced oil, which is equally plentiful and, of course, of excellent quality. It's a thriving industry for which we need to give thanks to the gods and the humble and hardy olive tree. In fashion, the noblewoman trying to stay current with the latest hairstyles can be sure of one thing. There will be something new next week. From layers and ringlets to elaborately built-up creations incorporating hairpieces in a range of colors, the concerns with staying in style have become so great that portrait busts are now available with removable hairpieces, which is why more and more households have added at least one ornatrice to their slave pool for full-time assistance. Well, today's look at the unseemly side of life for those plebs who have to work for a living takes us to the urine urns and public latrines at our baths and on our streets. The job of regularly emptying them and selling the urine is a publicly contracted and strictly monitored position. It can be back-breaking work requiring long hours, and there are fines for late collections. It is, however, steady work, and it fills an important role. It gets the urine to the dry cleaners, where our wool and clothing are cleaned and softened. And finally, a new denarius has been issued for this year, marked on the reverse side with a globus, the unofficial symbol of Rome's dominion and civilizing mission to the world. Already there are 80 million peoples living in peace as their subjects in all lands surrounding the Mediterranean. East to Parthia and the Arab desert, south to the desert, west to the sea, and north to the edges of Gaul. Surely, it's Rome's mission to continue to bring their values and institutions to the world. And as Posidonius argued, subject people should not only accept, but welcome their conquests by the Republic. It is, after all, a Roman world with Roman ideals, and there is nothing her subjects can or should try to do to change that. Not the horse breeders and salt merchants and their sons in Hispania, or the farmers and grain merchants and their sons in Egyptus, or the fishermen and carpenters and their sons in Judea. And that wraps up today's look at history's headlines.